Welcome to the Missionary Disciple Podcast. Today we have with us Holly Leonard and Michael Hall, and we're going to be talking about the 3 M's of a movement. Mysterious title, the 3 M's of a movement. And just before we even go into it, I'm going to lay out a little bit, like, what do we mean by a movement? And we could do a whole episode on a movement, but just in a broad sweeping way, it would be a group of people that are united under a particular mission and that they can accomplish much more together than they could on their own. So they have this, it's a group in a mission. It's versus being an association or a club. We're a movement. So these 3 M's of movement is a teaching that we do that emphasizes these integral factors that keep the integrity of a movement as a movement. So I'm going to hand it over to our expert, Michael Hall, to explain the 3 M's just in like a broad overview, and then we'll go into them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, first you look at multiplication, be the first of the 3 M's. So multiplication is basically having the mindset that this is not just about the person in front of you, but it's about the next generation after that and the next generation after that. We talk about it with kind of another acronym of PEC, Proclaim, Equip, Commission, that we're always proclaiming the gospel. We're equipping people to live the gospel, but also to proclaim the gospel. And then we're commissioning them to go out and do that, to live the life of faith, but also to live the life of mission as well. Okay. And so there's always that mindset. Momentum is basically that God is moving. God is always moving something forward, and that we are uniting around a common goal that is, but it's a common goal for God's glory. And so when you have momentum, your movement is always going forward. It's not stagnant.
Okay.
It should always be moving forward for God's glory, not just for the sake of movement, but moving towards the goal that you set up that God has given you.
Okay.
And then management is that you can be moving forward, you can be multiplying, but if you don't have this thing under control, it's going to get out of control.
Okay.
And so you need management to make sure that people are cared for, to make sure that your movement is cared for, and that it's kind of you're stewarding its growth in the right direction. It also is just part of the look and feel. If it looks and feels like it's out of control, it can often be unattractive to people because they say you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants. So you want to have kind of all the details in place. But again, it's not just about the look of it. It's also that you're then caring for the people. People don't fall through the cracks because you have good management of the people.
Okay. So if no one listened any further, actually, you've just done a brilliant synopsis of a teaching on the 3 M's. So bye. Anyway, so let's just go a little deeper into that. So let's talk about multiplication. Maybe I'll swing over to Holly. Like, why is multiplication so key for a movement?
I think because it defines the expectation and the dynamic of what the relationships look like in the movement. So it's like, again, you contrasted with club, but multiplication makes it a movement because when I'm connecting with someone and I'm investing in them and I'm loving them and I'm using the program, I'm using the material, I'm using this tool, but it's just that. It's a tool to help me proclaim more completely in a way that they can receive who Jesus is and who he wants to be in their lives. I'm super celebrate that step and I'm excited when that happens, but it's like my satisfaction is only complete when I've completed the commissioning of inviting them into the mission. So it helps me pace myself as a leader and know the steps that lie before me, that this is what's expected because the renewal of the world is necessary. And it's possible if I look at this individual, not like, oh, I'm going to get something out of you, but the Lord has called me to the renewal of the world. And this is the particular mission I'm living it out in. Therefore, the leaders he brings to me, I get to multiply into and through and leave with them the legacies that will follow the next generation, like you spoke about. So we take time to completely proclaim, in a way that they can receive. We take time to equip them in holiness and in mission, like the 2 sides of the coin, like we often speak about. And then we invite them to do what we've just done with them to another, who will do it to another. And that is the process out of the gates that I'm aware of. This is the dynamic that we do here. And that is what makes it distinct, because there are prayer groups that I also attend, and there are ministries that I go to for particular functions. But this piece, in the mission and building the kingdom is to multiply, to make multiplying missionaries.
So it's distinctive of a movement.
It is distinctive, yeah.
Right. So the other entities that you described are appropriate and good for what they're doing. But as a movement, there has to be multiplication because it implies growth.
Yeah.
And you could do addition growth.
Sure.
But I think we've had an episode on spiritual multiplication, maybe not. But that addition is a way of growing. But the smarter, more effective, more potential actually is through multiplication.
That's right.
And growing leaders.
That's right. So that there's always, it can always, like you said, like go on, the mission can go on beyond the people that we have that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have different language that we use in CCO. Like we've got the next generation mindset, meaning I'm always thinking about who are the next upcoming leaders that I'm reaching, that I'm just talking to them for the first time today, but I already see their potential for how amazing they would be if they could work with other people once they know and love the Lord, right? We also talk 1, 2, 3, 4 lately, right?
Yeah.
So there's this propensity in us to be trying to put language around an ownership of multiplying leaders. We're not hoping to just be the leader forever. We want to work ourselves out of a job.
That's right. And so we're looking for opportunities. We're looking for ways to entrust, to impart, to share responsibility, to invite them into the mission. And that's what it would look like if you came and spent a day around that group. From the outside, it looks like a group. Like it totally looks like a happy group of people.
Right.
And but when you start, seeing the different functions and the ways that the people are carrying it, becomes really obvious that it's not just one guy that everyone's following or a group of 3 people. There's shared ownership, shared responsibility. Tasks are happening. Excitement is happening. A shared ownership, in the mission becomes obvious. It should be obvious.
There's an intentionality of even having people alongside of you, is that you're actually building into them, multiplying into them through the activity that they're helping you with, because you're like, someday you'll be able to do this. There's always a teaching sort of perspective that we want to build into people, equip them so that they can do it. So when you do hang around at first glance, at first blush, it's like they're fun.
Yeah.
But actually there's an intentionality in practically everything we do, even the having fun.
I think so.
What would go wrong, Michael, if we didn't have multiplication happening? We just had the other M's of the movement. We have momentum and we've got some management. So meaning like we probably have some really exciting things and they're well organized, but we're not multiplying people. What goes wrong?
Well, it's only going to last as long as you have those contagious leaders who are going to, carry that momentum forward. If they aren't preparing another generation of leaders, then when they're finished being the leaders for whatever reason that might be, if they don't have the next generation, then you're at the very best, you're starting from scratch, and at the very worst, it might just collapse because there's been no multiplication of leaders to be able to take the place of the people who are currently leading. So if we look at like a campus, for example, people are around for just a few years on campus. If those leaders don't multiply next generation, then they graduate and they leave, what's left? And the same can go for a parish. Those parish leaders, they get transferred in their job, they move away, they retire, and they don't have the time anymore. What happens then?
Yeah. That's hard.
And you can end up, I'm just thinking as he's saying it, it's like, it's not hard to end up there. It's kind of like, we might be listening, go, oh, I would never, and that would never happen. But it's like, it's really not hard to end up there, because along the way, you're planning an event or you're planning the next 12 weeks of what's happening. And if we're not asking ourselves, okay, yes, we're the core team, or we're the staff team, or we're the like tinier group of people that are planning the things, and you don't say, who can I include and how can I include them, or who would be ready to kind of watch me do this and get ready to be the next one, it almost, you'll still plan the super awesome thing and it'll happen and those weeks will unfold, but it's missed opportunities along the way that you end up there, right? You don't like kind of wake up in the morning and go, totally not choosing to multiply. It's actually the opposite. It's like forgetting that it is little throughout the day to trust the people that God has brought in our midst, that He wants to build into them, even if they don't look like it yet or behave in the certain ways. It's like, hey, Lord, how can I, and it's small things. Like if I can give a couple examples, it'd be like, you're organizing an event and it's really natural for you and your core people to be the one to give the testimony, to be the welcomer, to get the snacks. But there's so much room, and we'll get into that within management, to entrust like pieces of that mission in a really important way, which is multiplication, to invite someone new to give a testimony and to spend time training them. That's an action of multiplication. You could have easily just actually more quickly done it. And I think that's the temptation is, okay, we've got to be fast and we don't have time. We don't want to bother people. They're already doing so much. They're already coming out on Tuesday nights. Yes, Yeah. But if you really are driven, to build a movement, and multiplication is the way, then you have to like consistently reflect on ways to entrust and invite others like into the work.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Mhm.
Like it's the thing we'd all say, yeah, that sounds right. But then in real life, I've got awesome leaders and we're just going to go and we're doing great until those leaders are gone. And for us, we have a little bit of an advantage because we're on campus and we only have people for 3 or 4 years, maybe sometimes 1 or 2. So we have to keep multiplying through those people to find the new people and building up new leadership all the time. So we're a little bit used to it. But if I was working in a parish, for sure I would use the same awesome person for 40 years because they're
great.
awesome, they're committed, they're doing it. Yeah, but I'm not actually growing any other awesome people maybe as well as this has as good as this person is because I don't have to. And I don't like work. So I'm totally, it takes time.
Patience,
it takes
failure.
patience. Evaluating what they need next. Like, what can I bring them into? How can I teach them this? Like, it's slower and harder. But why we do it is because we're a movement that's implying growth and sending out growing leaders into the world. So it means work.
And it's worth it. It's
And
worth
it's
it,
worth
not
it.
just for our group to do well and our group to become a movement, but for these individuals as they go on and leave their time in the movement, become moms and dads and leaders and priests and diocesan employees. They remember and they've learned and they've assimilated like these principles, and they can live them out in the settings that they go into because they matter.
Yeah, they matter for it to go.
And if your leaders don't have that mindset, then they want those opportunities because they are the leaders. They want to be, like, my testimony is ready and I'm really good at it, so I should probably do it. Why would you ask the newer person who's never done it before when you've got somebody who's polished? But if you have a multiplication mindset, you know that it's not just about what this one instance looks like, this one event or this one small group or whatever.
Story.
You know, you're building into this person who's going to become the next generation of leaders. So you're willing to tolerate maybe a slightly lower quality because you know you're building this person up into being the next generation of leader. But then that's a decision you have to make, and that means that maybe if the perfectionism side of you might go, I don't know, I don't want to. I just want this person. I know what they'll do. I know it'll be perfect when they do it, but it's for the sake of growth. It's for the sake of the future leaders. We're never going to build them if they don't get a chance to grow. We have to give them that chance.
It's scary.
Yeah, and it's intentional accompaniment. So I like your example about the testimony because we're not just going to say, well, we'll dedicate it to the new kid. No, we're going to sit down, we're going to write the testimony, help them figure out their conversion, help them articulate it, show them how to say it, have them practice with us, tell them they can do it, pray with them, all the things. And after they do it, we'll give them feedback and like, wow, if you could do that all over again, here's what you did great and here's what, you could have done differently. But when you do it again, it's going to be even better, right? So there's that accompaniment that you have to walk alongside them as you're multiplying. It's not just, well, let's push it down to, let's not hazing, like give it to the new kid, right? We're going to like walk with you because we want you to be able to then teach someone else how to give a testimony.
Because what are
next
they
year.
acquiring? Like while we're doing that with them, they're acquiring like confidence. They see that the gospel is of first importance in the very way that we structure and carve out the testimony. Like they see what matters most out of all the things I can say. Like they learned so much in getting worked, like a tiny task that it can look like when we're planning an event. Well, where does who's going to be the testimony? It's actually a major, accompaniment opportunity, growth opportunity, multiplication opportunity. There's so much like under that iceberg that we're aware of. And we over time become less tempted to the quick, and more inclined to the longer, harder work for the sake of that individual, for the sake of the movement, for the sake of the renewal of the world. Because we know that there's, the fruits are going to extend beyond that event. Yeah.
Okay.
That's multiplication.
Okay. All right. Just seeing if anybody else had anything to say. Okay. So let's look at the next M, which is momentum, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So momentum. Why? Let's go to you, Hall. Why is momentum so important to be included in these 3 M's? Like, why does it get one of the top 3 pillars of keeping something to be a movement?
My experience when I was coming into CCO, there was this vocabulary of like, God is on the move, there was a language of that. And I think that momentum is just that. It's like that there are individuals like leaders, participants, staff, or leaders, participants, core members that are caught up, that God is doing something in their midst, that he's changing lives, that he's moving powerfully, that he's healing people and bringing freedom, and they're captured by it, and they're talking about it, and they're taking advantage of events to talk about it. And it's like the middle piece on the coffee table of that group that I thought they were, right? I thought it was a group, but it was the only group I'd ever met and been close to that talked so much about what God was doing and almost so little about kind of normal things like complaining and processes and, just programs and what's coming next week. Oh, cool. It was actually all about God. And it's cultural. It's a strong cultural piece. And it's a force. It moves people. It draws people in. And at the very least, like gives them questions going, okay, I kind of want to come back here. There's something here. And it gives very fertile soil, like for the proclamation of the gospel in their lives, for them to hear who Jesus is and who he wants to be. It's falling on this awesome, silver platter, if you will, of, he's here and he's moving and he's real.
Okay, so besides the cultural piece, what are so the culture piece that you're saying is super important? Like it's the way that we talk with an energy and an excitement about what God is up to. Which is glory stories ties into that. Like we love to share and see what the Lord is up to. I'm going to throw it back to Michael and just like paint the picture for our listeners of like, what are some types of events or things that a movement does that are momentum building?
I mean, there's lots of different ways you can go about it. One of the things you're trying to do is just create an excitement.
Okay.
But it's not just a rah, here we are, like, yes, let's go. It's like we talk about a man-made momentum. We can get really excited about things just for the sake of being excited about things. But it's about, as Holly was saying, like what is God doing and getting excited about that. So getting people into places where they can encounter God and in an exciting way, which any encounter with God should be exciting. You're encountering the Lord of the universe. This is a big deal. So, if I think about our campus experience, we often do things like retreats is one of the big ways we can build momentum. It's kind of like a big event or like our Rise Up conference. It's big, it's flashy. It gets people really excited. Those are like big, kind of big swings at momentum. But then there's also like your day-to-day momentum that you're trying to build as well. So we would have, your weekly event, that you might have on your campus. That can be a moment because you're bringing a bunch of people together and they'll have a common experience, which can really drive forward the common experience they can rally around and want to bring others into.
Okay.
And that can happen with these big, a Rise Up type experience, or a weekend retreat. That can happen with a Eucharistic adoration night because people go and they encounter God and they walk away from that excited. And then part of the way you build the momentum from it is that you talk about it. And it's not just that they go and have this experience, but now you help them put context into that experience. You speak about it. You speak about it individually. You speak to in groups, and then you get them to speak to others about it. So they say, "Yeah, I had a great time at the whatever event, or even just in my small group. I loved my discovery experience. You should probably try that too. Like it was really great. Let me tell you about why it was so great." And just even those small things then can create momentum. Even just the smallest thing of people coming in saying, "I had a great prayer time this morning." That can create momentum.
Right.
It's the smallest thing, but it's because you're talking about what God is doing. And if we rally around together what God is doing, then it's exciting.
Okay.
And then people want to get on board with that sort of thing because they see this isn't just a stagnant group.
Right.
It's not that groups are stagnant, but this particular group is stagnant. Or they just do stuff maybe for the sake of doing things, but actually in what's happening, God is moving, and he's moving in individuals. He's moving in the whole body, and so I want to get on board with that.
Right.
Like, there's something exciting happening here. Momentum should create that, where other people then want in on what's going on because they go, something different is happening here.
Yeah, and as you're building a movement, you're growing a movement, you're making a map, with your core team of like, okay, how are we going to do this thing? And you have short-term plans, you have long-term plans, and this is a big enough deal that we put it in as like, if there's 3 M's, like momentum really is a big deal. So just as important as the details and booking all the rooms of where your faith studies are going to happen or where your adoration nights, also the intentionality of where will we need momentum, and why will we need it there? Where will there be a gap between everyone finishing discovery and shoot? There's that big big event happening. Well, like you just looking smart at your year, like really far out, and then moving backwards to place things. And so we've talked a lot about the phases, and you can check out those episodes. We can link them, where we just on our campus have a rhythm like that just runs itself as a movement all around the calendar year, where there's events that fall retreat, and then rise up, and then missions, and those are all just carefully placed, and they're really smartly placed. And in parishes and in other settings, we're looking at that. We're going, okay, where is the time where we think it's really smart to put all of our team's energy towards an event, and what will we do following up after that? So two of the layers, and you were getting at it, in your examples of what's the daily momentum and the bigger momentum, I would see like at a parish that's choosing, okay, you know what, we want to invite people to discovery. We're going to do that through our individual invitation, but we also want to do an event so that it can look like an attractive initiative to be a part of. So at an adoration night, they're placing them exactly around the time when their leaders are ready to start new studies. So they have a new crop of leaders coming, and entrusting them with leadership at the event, which is multiplication. There's momentum because the leaders are at a cool new thing that they're kind of in charge of, but the old crowd is also there kind of in charge. There's shared excitement, and then there's scheduled lingering right after for the core group of people and the leaders that were there that night. Like, what did you see God do? Because yes, there's the participants' experience of like, whoa, I'll do the discovery study. If this is what this group is up to, this is cool and attractive, and there's prayer teams, and there's people that are really welcoming. But also for the new leaders and the existing leaders to get together and to reinforce, like, first of all, we expect that God did things tonight, and let's talk and share. It implies that they're having spiritual conversations, and you're taking advantage of that night to the fullness to grow those leaders, build momentum in their heart that the little hard thing or the big hard thing that they had to do that night mattered for what God did in that individual life that was changed. So it is those daily, and those can happen after faith studies. Like, you might be in a setting where there's not a lot of events and large group and retreat and these things, but it doesn't mean you can't create momentum, like debrief at the end of the week after your faith studies, with your leaders. And that is a momentum event. Yeah, it's a reminder of coming together that God is doing something, and you're using it to continue to invite them to give their yes and the sacrifice. Because there's weight, right, involved in ministry and in leadership, and momentum just complements it, but also reminds us of why we're doing what we're doing. Yeah.
So I hear you guys saying, like, there's an energy, there's a rallying, there's an encouragement that happens in it.
Yes.
So it keeps people not isolated. And I think that's like the enemy's tactic, is to isolate, divide, make us feel alone. But when we're brought together in the unity and vibrancy of the Holy Spirit, and like God is on the move, this happened, that was so awesome, we're all together, we did something excellently that had a goal, and I feel more encouraged and inflamed to go and do my mission with all of my friends that we are like-minded. We need that energy because we get tired, we get discouraged. We're like, oh, my group wasn't that great, my this wasn't that great. But then you gather with the other leaders and someone says something, you're like,
That's why
okay,
we're here.
yeah, I want that. Okay, I'm going to pray for that. And I like how she did that. I'm going to try that in my group next time. And you have some success. Or, okay, that inspires me. I'm just going to persevere more. So we need to be encouraged, because we're so weak that we're like, is this working? I don't know. And we're meant to be the body of Christ, right? We're not meant to be islands. And that's the Catholic Church. We're meant to be together. And so as a movement in the Catholic Church, we want to have momentum there so that everybody feels like something's happening. And that something is actually the Lord. Something's happening. And we want to inflame that as much as we can. And like, let's just keep doing it. Let's do something great for God.
And carving out that time for momentum to happen, like for the debriefing and the sharing. Again, if we're efficiency minded, we're just like, oh, it's just an extra thing. It's gonna everyone's tired, just let them go home. That temptation is there, and like we do it, and we're like, but what you're highlighting, Angèle, is so real that you're like, it's such a myth. It's so hard to create the settings and the environment or an event where we can really tangibly see and feel and hear about God on the move, that to miss the opportunity to linger and debrief is just like very sad. And it's a missed opportunity of capitalizing from that momentum that's natural that he's actually giving, to you, to encourage you. And I remember someone like, back in the day in charge of overheads, like just when we had the, the words for the songs that were not on Open Song and everything great now. But, hearing about a student who was impacted by the worship song that they don't know and they're disoriented, and being able to read the lyric and sing it and mean it really from their heart. It's like, if you weren't there and able to do that and we didn't have you, like, it matters. Like, we're all connected. And your sacrifice of having to do that annoying job, for the event, it matters, because look what happened. Look what God used it for. So,
and when you're used to it happening, then you actually can't wait to all get together to share the beautiful thing that the Lord just did. We have it every Friday in our headquarters. We have glory story time just to share with one another and be encouraged in what the Lord is up to. And it inspires us to keep trying, because it is a battle of faith, but the Lord has victories in those battles. So we need to remember them. Okay, what happens if we don't have momentum? So we've got a movement that's got multiplication, like people are being trained and produced, and we've got them really well organized, but we actually have no energy and momentum and rallying and that kind of like positive vibe going. What happens to a movement in that case?
I think all the negative things that you kind of alluded to, like you were saying, the lies win. Like, I am alone. No one cares. No one notices me. Or there's a little clickiness and whispering and gossiping that can develop. Like, this is dumb. We should have done this way. Just all the stuff from being divided, from the mission, from the purpose, from one another. It's those, like, people are burdened. They start dropping out. Or when you are an engaged leader in a movement without momentum and you really want to invite friends, they come and they're like, I don't want to be here. It doesn't, like, there doesn't seem to be something what's attractive. So even though you might like your members and you do understand the mission and there is no momentum, it's really hard to bring new people in and make it be somewhere comfortable for leaders to bring people, because there isn't that energy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the burnout effect for your leaders is really, I think that's where it happens.
Okay.
Because the life of ministry is a marathon. Like, if we're really in this for the long haul, it's a long haul. It's really our whole life. And if we want to be able to do it for our whole life, and we know it's not easy, it's difficult, and you're going to go through really hard times, and it's going to take up lots of your life. That can often be the case if we're really diving into leadership and that. Like, there's never an end to what needs to be done. We've never reached the whole world. What sustains us is the momentum. Is that excitement of that God is always on the move and seeing what He's doing on a daily basis. Because without that, we're just going to fizzle out. And that's where I think a lot of people that we see, that probably many of us know, that burn out in ministry. It's understandable. Like, it's really understandable. There's a lot to do. There's a never-ending task here of reaching the whole world.
Yeah, and it's sad, even in our support raising, and we have thousands of benefactors, and we take time with each of them, and because they're like really awesome, good people, maybe feeling isolated in their community, and we tell them what's happening on campus, and we're so excited, they're moved because they just don't get the momentum side.
Yeah.
They're faithful, they're doing all the things, but all they're seeing is defeat. But when we share like this story or that story or this student, they're like, oh my goodness, okay, well, maybe things aren't so bad. And we've always been described as being a movement that brings hope, that brings hope. And why? Because we actually, first of all, we have great expectations that the Lord will do something awesome, and we're ready every time. We, like the person saying, like, let's have glory stories, maybe never ever has the glory story, but they know there's glory stories in the room. Like, the Lord has done something, and I need to hear it, and we all need to hear it. So it's a definitive marker of being a movement, is this momentum, and also that excellence, like you alluded to. Yeah, the excellence of like a program that I could invite friends to. That's
absolutely
good, right. Okay, so let's go to the last M, management. Oh, fun. Let's talk about
everybody's
management.
favorite.
Okay, why is management so important to a movement, Michael?
Well, I would say one of the key things is you're going to miss people. And I think that's one of the things with management is we can look at it and say, oh, it's the detail. Maybe that's the boring side of ministry. or the part you don't want to do. I just want to get in there. I want to lead this group. I want to have this event. But if we don't manage it well, we're actually going to miss the people. Because there's that person then that doesn't get into a group. They left their name and nobody contacted them because you didn't manage well enough. Yeah, and that phone number got lost, that email got lost, and now that person's kind of hanging in the wind, and you could have had an opportunity to reach them. And so then we lose the excellence of what we do. And if there's one thing that should define our ministries, it's excellence, because we're working for the Lord. And most people are drawn to fun and exciting, but also excellent too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's that frustration, I think, is the key word. Like if it's missing, people are frustrated. Like I sent you guys an email. I did this, I did that. And it's like, oh yeah, it's just so annoying. But when also on the contrary, like when you go to an event like Rise Up, like people are like, oh wow, like everything was cared for me. And I had a question, that person took care of it. And like, you guys thought of all these things. Like this is, they feel blessed and impressed, I guess, by what's the management that's making it all happen. But if those things aren't there, or maybe they don't even notice it, but they do notice it when it's not there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it makes it compromises what we're trying to do. So like if this is a really disorganized group and it's all about proclaiming Jesus, then it's like, okay, it's a mixed signal. Like to you, like I remember one of the first things, when I was in news staff, they're like, we are a movement of excellence. Like we do everything with excellency. Mm-hmm. And it inspired me. And what I was interpreting more is that like every little thing I'm doing, every detail I'm entrusted with actually matters in a bigger story. And I need to treat it as such, and treat it with excellence, because if I don't, then it impacts other people and what they're up to. So to notice, to affirm, to thank, to do, we talk about really good delegation, really clear on the details. There's a lot of moving pieces in a movement. There's timelines, there's launch dates, there's training, there's, we said we were going to do this on this day. And then actually we're emailing last minute. Like not being organized it burns leaders, it hurts leaders. Yeah. And, we learn and we say sorry. But the better we can be in our management, delegating and planning, it's for the gospel. It will set the gospel up for success that semester, and the multiplication that needs to happen will happen much more smoothly. And I guess it is also to an acknowledgement that there will be attack. Like there's going to be opposition and interference to the work that we're trying to do. So to be strong and managed well helps us encounter those things with strength and to persevere. But if we're not managed well and there's interference, it's like it's just very challenging to overcome it amidst already being disorganized.
Yeah.
And it's a quick way to lose trust with people.
Yeah.
That if you don't take care of the details and it was something they asked of you or something you promised to do and then you didn't do it, you don't come through, even though it has nothing to do with the gospel, it can end up hindering your ability to proclaim the gospel because you don't portray yourself as trustworthy.
That's right.
And so then if you can't take care of this small detail, why would I trust you with my soul? Why would I trust you to teach me how to move forward in my faith life? Amen. Because you seem like you're a bit of a mess yourself.
Yeah, it makes an impression.
Yeah.
Makes an impression. Okay, so these are the three big things. So let's go, give me just one last question here. Like, why are these 3 M's so important for a movement?
Yeah, they're all equally critical to protect us from becoming a group, which is not what we're called to be. So a group has a defined purpose for an amount of time and is underneath the leadership that's there at that time. But because we want to be a movement and we want to keep growing and entrusting and multiplying, we need all 3 M's at play all the time. That's that we have decided to be a movement, and that is our unique mission. So we always need to have the multiplication happening with the momentum happening and have it be really managed well with excellence.
Okay, great. All right, so there you go. That's the 3 M's of a movement. And just like that doesn't come naturally. These are things that CCO leadership will be looking at on campus or whatever they're doing all the time. Like, how's that momentum getting in there? Are we multiplying leaders? And how's our management lining up so that we can push forward the most people, the growing amount of people in the mission and objective that the Lord has given us to do. So I hope that helps you a lot in what you're doing in parishes or on campus, and that you too can be growing a vibrant movement. Thank you.